The Echo in the Attic. In the quiet, sleepy town of Maplewood, there stood an old Victorian house known to everyone as the Thatcher House. It had been abandoned for decades, the paint peeling and the windows dusty. Rumors circulated about strange occurrences, but few believed them, until the Johnson family moved in. It was a sunny afternoon when the Johnsons first arrived. Sarah, their teenage daughter, was particularly excited. She had always been fascinated by old houses, and this one, with its creaky wooden floors and antique furniture, was a dream come true. Her parents were less enthusiastic but eager to start anew. The first few days were uneventful, filled with the usual unpacking and settling in. However, it didn't take long for Sarah to notice something strange. Every night, just as she was about to drift off to sleep, she heard faint whispering coming from the attic. At first she dismissed it as the house settling or her imagination playing tricks on her. But the whispers continued, growing slightly louder each night. One evening, curiosity got the better of her. Sarah grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate the attic. The narrow stairs creaked under her weight as she ascended, the air growing colder with each step. When she reached the top, she hesitated for a moment, her hand trembling as she reached for the door handle. The attic was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets and cobwebs. As Sarah scanned the room with her flashlight, she felt a chill run down her spine. In the far corner of the attic, she noticed a small, dusty mirror. It was cracked and looked out of place among the other items. She approached it, drawn to its eerie presence. As she stared into the mirror, Sarah noticed something odd. Her reflection seemed different. It was subtle, but there was something off about the eyes looking back at her. They seemed darker, almost hollow. She blinked and shook her head, but the unsettling feeling remained. Suddenly, the whispers returned, louder and more distinct. They were coming from the mirror. Terrified, Sarah backed away. But before she could turn to leave, the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once. Panic set in as she frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room grew colder, and Sarah's breath became visible in the air. The voices began to chant in unison, their words incomprehensible but filled with malice. Then, as quickly as it started, everything went silent. The temperature returned to normal, and the door creaked open. Breathless and shaken, Sarah fled the attic, swearing never to return. She didn't tell her parents what had happened, fearing they wouldn't believe her. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her from the attic. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah started noticing odd occurrences throughout the house. Objects moved on their own, and strange shadows danced along the walls. The whispers occasionally returned, always seeming to come from the direction of the attic. One night, Sarah woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Her heart raced as she listened, realizing they were heading towards her room. The door creaked open, and she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was her reflection from the attic mirror, its eyes dark and soulless. The figure stepped closer, and Sarah tried to scream, but no sound came out. It reached out a hand, cold and clammy, and touched her face. As it did, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread and despair. The figure whispered in her ear, "You've let us in." Suddenly, Sarah was back in her bed, drenched in sweat. She looked around, but the figure was gone. It felt like a bad dream, but the cold touch lingered on her skin. She knew she couldn't stay in the house any longer. The next morning, Sarah convinced her parents to leave, citing an unbearable feeling of unease. They agreed, sensing the same discomfort. As they packed their belongings and left the house, Sarah couldn't help but glance back at the attic window. To her horror, she saw her reflection staring back at her, a sinister smile on its face. The Johnson family moved away, and the Thatcher house returned to its eerie silence. No one in Maplewood dared to enter it again. But every so often, on quiet nights, whispers could be heard emanating from the attic, and those brave enough to get close claimed they could see a shadowy figure watching from the window. A reminder that once you let them in, they never truly leave.